Okay, we call tonight's meeting to order. The Board of Selectmen, August 23rd, 2022. And myself, Bob Carlson, the first selectman. Also with us tonight is Brett Mastriani, selectman, Nicole Porter, select woman, and admin finance director, Christine Dias. We start, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, are there any public comments on non-agenda items? Something that's not going to be covered tonight on the agenda. Is there any hands raised online, Christine? None? Okay, nothing from the audience. Any comments from the two selectmen? None?
I know we had talked at one point about the overdose awareness, and I thought that the firehouse did not want to do anything, but I do see that we ended up booking something for the Wheeler Library.
Yes, the Wheeler Library embraced it. They're gonna have something on the 31st. I have a couple of flyers I'm putting up and we put on the town website today. Yep. Perfect. Okay, on my end, on the first selectman report, the only thing I have is just want to let you know we do have a highway vacancy, and one of the young men has only been with us a short period of time, took a job, was moving on to something else, so we're posting that. Have we posted it yet, Christine? We're posting it Friday. Okay, and we did post the for the town tax collector has been posted, and that closes next week. Is that correct?
We'll start reviewing applications on Friday, but we'll still accept it as a rolling review.
Great, thank you.
How many do we have?
Okay. Old business. Demolition of the one-story 298 Norwich Wesley Road. Well, everyone knows that's also known as the one-story wing, the old middle school, the 1950 and 1960 wing. It's that part of the building that's way over there on Main Street. Our contractor started on the 15th, and right now they're mitigating mostly inside work. They put a big fence up around the building, as you can see. Things are going pretty smoothly. Couple of hiccups, nothing major, like breaking the air conditioner in this room, but it's being fixed. And that'll be fixed very shortly. And other than that, I gotta say, we have a fantastic clerk of the works working with us. He's been great. We have another meeting tomorrow. We meet every Wednesday at 9 a.m. And yeah, it's been a good process so far, and let's hope it stays as smooth as it's been. It's only been a few weeks, but looks like it's trending in a good direction. Shared services. I usually have Brett. I put this on. Brett wanted to keep it on for a while. I will let you know that Bill and Alicia from the central office met with Christine and Sue last week. They had a nice meeting going through the accounting process, and so far it seems like it's going to be a good working environment for the two, for both the town hall and the school. Is there any comment on demolition or shared services by either selectman? Any comment from the audience on demolition of the 298 building or the shared services that as we're trying to build relationships between the school with all their new people in the town hall? Is there anything online? Any questions, comments? Okay. Okay, seeing none. Purchasing policy. Should that would be in your packet? It's something that we spoke about at the last meeting. We made some amendments at the suggestions made by the selectmen on where things should be, and I think I'm in a position now. I hope the board's in a position to adopt this tonight if you see fit. If you got a chance to read it over and compare it to what was suggested, I think you'll see it's exactly what was talked about. Right.
Yeah, I read through it again, and I did a little more research. There are some things that I'd like to see if we can tweak, if you guys are open to it. So the purchase is over $20,000 for competitive bid. I know we moved into using, some of the government, the state of Connecticut, qualified bidders contracts. So we don't always go out to bid, but I think we should not necessarily revisit that, but maybe put some language in. So I looked at some other towns. There weren't many that talked about the, qualified bidders. But the ones that I did see also put in there, if we are using someone from the list, that we receive 3 quotes from people on that list. At least 3. I think that would be beneficial. I don't think just because we use that list that we're necessarily getting the best price and the best quality just because they're on that list. I read through how they get on the list and they submit. But also towns also have a bid list of people that want to be on their bid list for their town. They sign up with the town. So when we do have bids, we automatically send them to those bidders as well.
We currently have that through the website. You can sign up to get updates when we post new RFPs, RFQs and bids proposals. So we do already have that. So automatically when something, just like when you sign up for updates from the Board of Selectmen and you get the agendas, you get that if you sign up through the website for RFPs.
Okay. So I can tell you the few things that I'm thinking of, and then we can talk about it. The other question I had is whether we should put this in an ordinance. Most of the towns I've seen have it in an ordinance. And the state statute allows us, or actually, if you read it, they don't require municipalities to use competitive bidding or award contracts to make purchases, but municipalities may adopt such requirement individually by ordinance or charter. So a lot of the towns I saw, they have it as part of their ordinances. I don't know if we just do it this way and it's just our policy, or if it's beneficial to have it as an ordinance going forward. That's the second one. And then the third one is the end of year fiscal year purchasing. Again, I did a lot of research on it. I haven't found any really, other than one town that has all goods must be received by the date, June 30th. Most have to be invoiced by then, but not received, especially given supply chain problems that we've seen over the past few years. Sometimes things are delayed. So if they're not received and they need to be paid for out of this budget cycle, it's silly that that's in there. Most businesses don't do it this way, and I can't find any towns that really do it this way. The one town that I saw talked about it for accounting purposes, that if there wasn't an issue, they use a PO and then they consider it a budget commitment, and they make sure the budget funds for a particular project or time period are not returned to the general fund at the close of the fiscal year. So they put whatever POs are out, if they use a PO, they put it outstanding. But up until a few years ago, we in North Stonington never had that. I don't know where that policy came from, but my years on the board, we always had to have it invoiced up until a few years ago by that time frame. So those are the 3 things that I just wanted to bring to attention that I was concerned about.
Nicole, do you have any comment on?
I'm okay with that. I'm used to just having the invoice be, or the PO be cut before June 30th. So I'm okay with that. I had, a question of the, purchases between the 1,500 and the 20,000, must be based on at least 3 written quotations or bids. How do we think that that's being monitored? Let's just say that Donnie needs to purchase an industrial snow blower. We put it in the policy, but how do we know? Are those people coming to you to say?
So when they submit everything for purchase, they have to include those quotes as their
Perfect.
full package.
Okay.
And with the purchase orders, QuickBooks doesn't create purchase orders. So that was why we implemented this process of having things received by June 30th. It made things cleaner for the end of the fiscal year and was recommended by our auditor. If you guys want to change that, that's fine. But it makes it gray for some of the areas if we don't put this hard stop in.
Then I think we should maybe do research on how all the other towns in Connecticut are doing it. And most businesses and large corporations do it, that the invoice, and we did it, and we used QuickBooks before, so I'm not sure why that changed. But I know we ran into an issue a few weeks ago where the Board of Ed still operates under received by. And we had an issue with that going through, and I thought we reached out to the auditor and got clarification on that.
Right, the auditor said that things can be invoiced, but the school uses purchase requests and they use purchase orders. They have that system in place, so they can have a purchase order that's dated by June 30th.
So if we have an invoice dated by then, why can't we do that like we did for the probably past 12 years that I know of, other than?
If that's what you guys want to change it to, then we'll make it work.
The biggest reason is because of the supply chain, and we know when we need to order something, especially if it's near the end of the year, if it doesn't come here, now you're going into the next budget cycle, which can totally throw off a budget.
Okay, so what my thought is, first of all, I don't want to compare how we do things in town to a big business or corporation because they're totally different. Comparing to other towns makes sense to me because white towns do things similar, but I don't want to compare to business. I don't mind changing it to invoice Christine, but I think we could maybe put a suggestion that we suggest all materials on order be in by June 30th, but we will allow an invoice. I just think if we see that somebody's abusing the system, we'll have to go address it on a one-on-one basis. So, as far as the qualified bidders, $20,000. Are you satisfied with the answer you got from Christine that we already have it set up on our computer that people can get alerts to when we put things out to bid? Or
For the bid list, but I'm not satisfied, I'd say, with not getting quotes from others on that same bid list.
do you want to take it upon yourself then to take the purchasing policy, kind of rewrite it, using this as a guide and bring it back at the next meeting? We can look at it.
Yeah, I mean, or I can read you exactly what's out of the closest one that I found was Preston, that has it. And if we write it, if you guys are okay with it, that really is the only thing. So it goes,
Brett, what if there aren't three vendors that are on the state contract list for a particular service?
then you don't, I'm gonna get to it. It was if there's more than one vendor. I should have used the highlighter one.
While Brett's looking, I just want to clarify 3D. And I think that I know the answer to this, but contracts will be awarded to the lowest qualified bidder. So I'm thinking back to the demolition bids. Certainly Best Tech had the lowest bid, but if we had found that they had forgotten some big piece in there, then they would no longer be the most qualified, correct? Okay, just want to make sure that we are not bound to awarding to the lowest bidder if we don't think that quality wise.
We can disqualify a bidder because of that.
And same thing when we did the window bid, when Bob went through and found that one of the companies had left out windows or changed the number of windows that they were bidding, then that disqualifies them as well.
All right, good.
So this is what it says here. This one, I mean, it might be a little longer than we need. It says if the state of Connecticut Department of Administration Services, Bureau of Purchases has awarded contracts for goods or services to bidders who warrant to the state that the prices, terms, and conditions will be extended to all political subdivisions within the state or to certain districts or counties within the state of Connecticut, the Board of Selectmen may authorize the purchase of those goods or services without bid. If there's more than one vendor listed for the same item, the town shall quote, it says, shall quotes from all listed vendors. So that might be a lot in, say, asphalt or something like that. So I'd personally be okay with having a few, so if it's more than one, you can get whatever, but it might be a lot to get all. As I read
So
it,
you
there
wanna-
was town that has 3.
Do you want to try to clean up that language and come back with us at the next meeting?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
And then the only other thing as well is since we have all these purchases between 1,500 and 19, as Nicole said, how do we make sure that's being followed? I'd like to look at some of the stuff that we do throughout a year. So I look at one of our vendors, and as I sign checks every week, I see a lot going through this vendor. So some of the purchases might be $500 or $1,000, but over a course of a year, it adds up. And we're not getting any discounts from these vendors. So I think of some of the like equipment we buy that's still equipment that we buy. There are vendors out there that give municipalities 10 to 15% off right off the bat. And then there's manufacturers that have programs as well. So I'd like us to at least have that on our radar and maybe put out some kind of information to our different departments to be mindful of that, because over a course of a year, when we're purchasing a lot of things, it adds up. And if we're overpaying $50 here, $100 here, like I said, over a course of a year, it adds up. There's also a company called Sourcewell that we can put that information in, and we can get multiple bids on just items that different municipalities use.
Can you provide me with information on those programs so I can pass it along to the departments? Because I haven't heard of any.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, obviously that's gonna be outside the policy
Right.
and just an awareness for the departments.
Okay, so why don't we then table this until our next meeting? Get some more information. Brett will reword that piece from Preston or from somewhere else. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Number 7, North Stonington Quarterly. So, Nicole, you win, I put those in your box, but.
Oh.
So we were approached by a company maybe about a month or so ago. And they said they'd like to talk to us about possibly, they knew we had a quarterly and they wanted to talk to us about doing a newsletter for us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the pros and the cons. I met with both Nita and Lisa on this, and some of the pros. As you're looking at it, you're seeing a very professional, colorized version of what our quarterly could be. Again, it's colorized, it's professionally done. It's they on the cost that it doesn't cost us a penny to have these made. We just handle the postage. They cover all the publishing cost because they sell advertising. We don't have to sell the advertising, they do it on their own. And some might think, well, we never had advertising before, and some people could see advertising as a negative. Some people could see it as a positive, especially the advertisers, if they want to target people in North Stonington. What I did is I asked Lisa and Nita to come today to speak a little bit about what their thoughts are on it. And then we can further the discussion and make a decision if we want to go this route. If we do, it would not take effect on the October 1st quarterly, because those articles are due in about a week. But we could consider doing it for the January 1st quarterly. After I ask Nita and Lisa to speak, and I will give you some more information about some of what I consider to be negatives. But Lisa or Nita, would you like to take a few minutes to talk about our discussion about this and what you think?
Okay, so yes, Bob invited Nita and I to the table to discuss the possibility of moving forward with this new version of the quarterly, which would indeed save the town somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000 a year. As currently our budget, well, currently we need to spend between $8,000 and $9,000 a year, including the postage. We would still continue to pay the postage, the town would, which would be around $2,000 a year. So it would be between a $6,000 and $7,000 a year savings. My concern with, or one of the minuses using going forward with this quarterly in this format is the timeline. The company that would produce it for us would require all the edited articles sent to them 6 weeks in advance. So that would mean that we would work on it 8 weeks in advance. So if January 1st were the target date to put the quarterly out there, we would need to send out the ask on November 1st and give about a week, no more than a week, for the contributors to submit their articles, as we would have to edit them and take that week to put it down into a file to send one whole file to the company. So currently it takes us about 3 weeks. Nita sends out the email like this time. We'll be sending it out probably the day after Labor Day on Tuesday. They'll have a week and then it'll go out on October 1st. So the content is fresh and current, which was our intention when we began producing the quarterly 9 years ago. It came from a community conversation with better communication between town and residents and boards, and it really became a quarterly report. It kind of became what icons used to be. I inform citizens of North Stonington kind of became a verb, which was to inform residents. And so I think it's done that. I don't want to say all bad things about it. I mean, it's beautiful. The pictures would be in color. It is nice and shiny and all that. But I don't know if we could get past the content not being fresh and not being really current. I mean, there are certain things that we spoke about date calendars and the dates and all the nonprofits. We know when the events are happening, so it really wouldn't affect that, but it would affect what how you're feeling right now about what you're writing. The schools in particular, we had talked about. Did you talk about, Bob, with the company regarding the Board of Selectmen and the schools being able to have that placeholder?
Just what we spoke about that night, that day when we had the Zoom meeting, and and what I believe he said was that you could accept 2 or 3 updates within a week or 2 before the printing. So, because we know when you look at the quarterly, there's some stories that could be written 3, 4, 5 weeks in advance easily, because they're not like the Grange and the Fair, and their calendar doesn't change much. They know when it's coming. But the schools and the Board of Selectmen is a little bit different, because we might have a vote coming up or a town meeting coming up. So he said if he would allow, 2 or 3 updates get as close to a week to 2 weeks before the publishing. So if I send an article and something changed, I could get a hold of them. And same thing we thought the Board of Selectmen and the schools would be most apt to do that. But as Lisa said, it's not all fresh, but not every organization that puts things in there. It's a news thing. It's more of just knowledge about what their committee does or what their organization does. So I'm in favor of this, but obviously it's a discussion by all 3 selectmen. I think the other negative is I spoke on is we've never had ads, and some people see that as a negative. Some people don't. I don't, because they say they're not going to put any more than 30% of the total content would be advertising. Secondly, it gives our local businesses a chance to target every mailbox in the town. And if they think that they can budget the kind of fees that they asked for, and we got a copy of the fees and they're not extravagant. But if a small business in North Stonington can target all the mailboxes in North Stonington versus putting something in the Day or the Wesley Sun and not knowing if everyone even has a subscription to that, I think it's just to me, it would be a positive on the advertising side. I just think that the saving of the town close to $6,000 to $7,000 a year, and the fact that we're producing a very professionally looking magazine, and Lisa didn't mention this, but Nita and Lisa still have the edit control on editing the stories, deciding what's going to go in, not on the advertising side, just on the content of the stories. And also we can tell them what pictures we want on the cover. We can tell them, any pictures related to the stories, we have that editing process. So my thought was maybe try this for a year, see how it goes, see if it makes sense, get feedback from the town on if they like it or they don't like it. And to me, a $7,000 savings to the taxpayer and getting a better looking magazine and having some of the articles, maybe a little bit on the stale side, but the ones that are the important ones, which are the school and the board of selectmen articles, could be updated up until almost the last one, I think that's the way that it works for us, but, I'll look for comments from the selectmen on this.
I, despite the fact that I'm the only Democrat on the board, I am actually not in favor of saving money here. I like this one in particular, 12 of the pages are full ads. I would end up throwing this away. I wouldn't end up even looking at it, whereas I get the quarterly, and because I know that it is literally from front to back. It's everything that I may want to know or need to know. I read it cover to cover. This, I would end up, I think that people are going to be confused when they get it in the mail because of the change, and we can try and communicate the change, but I see like 3.5 pages in this one in particular that actually have an article on them. I don't know.
It's just not
if they're
that
gonna-
one you're looking at, right? They all,
It-
the other
it-
ones are like that too?
So, I mean, this one in particular had fewer ads. And yes, they had some pictures, but, I don't, I know that it will be cheaper. I'm just not, I'm not a fan.
Right.
I hear what Lisa's saying about the lead time on it. I have to disagree with Nicole. I think as the costs we've seen go up $2,000 last year, so we're at $8,000 for the year. And that I don't even think touches on the postal services increases coming up again. I understand the concern about the ad space and taking out, so maybe we can talk to them about layout, spacing them or something. But the color, I think it does stand out. And I mentioned it actually to a business at the farmer's market in town that just reopened a store that they had. It was in quick meals and things like that. And she loved the idea of being able to advertise in something that's just North Stonington and going to all the businesses. I mean, all the residents. I see the pros and cons to both, but to me, the pros outweigh the cons with the color, and also, you know, being on economic development for so long, businesses in town have always struggled to get the word out of what's in town. People don't see what's here. This kind of puts it in front of them to say, hey, this is North Stonington, this is what we have to offer. Excuse me. I think it not only gets the word out, but it also makes our residents aware of the businesses and tries and allows them to try to support them. I do agree that if we don't market it correctly and we don't get the word out, we can have a negative effect. So maybe we do one more full article quarterly, like we produce now, and say, hey, be on the lookout for our new look. And talk about it on the front page of the quarterly. I just worry that with increased costs, we're gonna see it where we can't produce it. We didn't budget for this year, actually, the full amount. So I don't think we put the full amount in what it's gonna cost us for this budget cycle. And another pro, I think, to this is we do from time to time, as certain businesses or a nonprofit has an article in. I've received people that say, hey, how come that nonprofit / business gets to be in there, but other ones don't? And maybe they don't reach out, but I think this might open up that opportunity for those people that do complain about those things to put up money and advertise and get their word out that way.
So is it a requirement that they only post ads within our town, of businesses within our town?
No, but they said the requirement is not to have more than 30% of the total content to be ads. But they would, put it this way, they're there to make money. So they're gonna start with ads from the town of North Stonington first. If they can't get enough people to advertise, they're gonna have to go over the border. to a nearby town. Well, look in those magazines, those are Salem. Now Salem has about the same amount of business as we do. And if you can find ads that are outside of Salem, that'd be interesting to see. I didn't look that closely to see if we did, but I think you'll see most of the ads in there from Salem.
So is that something that's stated in there that they try to get, so I see ones from East Line, but, where they try to get locals first and then if they can't do it, or is that just?
It was
they
just
tell you?
expressed to us at the meeting that we had, the Zoom meeting with the company, so.
Because I agree with Nicole on that, where I would hate to see out of town restaurants really hitting our residents when our locals don't. And now it's one thing if they've tried the restaurants and they say, no, we don't want to advertise and they've only got a certain amount of spots, but that would be nice to have that where they say, yes, we're going to target all North Stonington resident or businesses first. And,
But if we decide to go that route, we can come up with some sort of a contract that states that we would have to go, we want North Stonington businesses first, but
May I?
sure.
Say
Go
anything?
ahead, Lisa?
Okay, I remember the Zoom meeting and, I had asked him the question, 'cause we typically have 20 pages of content. I said, would we be able to include our 20 pages of content? And he said, yes. And I asked how much in advertising would he need to generate for us to include our 20 pages and comment and content, plus 35 to 40% would be ads. And he said between $4,500 and $5,500 a quarter. So that's not going to all come from North Stonington. I can't imagine. I don't know if you guys have seen the price list, but just for a business card size, if you did all 4 quarters, it's $195 a quarter for just a business card size for our businesses. And I wanted to touch on the contributors. There are some, like Board of Selectmen in the schools that would have that priority, but there are other, they write what's going on right now. The Conservation Commission, Avalonia, Hewitt Farm, the Garden Club, they write what's going on right now. It's hard, it will be hard for them to write what's going on in 2 months to reflect, on November 1st, to reflect what's going on in
Yeah,
January.
They almost have
It'll
to
be
write it.
difficult.
They have to write the
so
article.
the
with
articles-
intent That,
Right. I mean, the articles, they could change and they would be different. It wouldn't be fresh. So it's like, where's, I guess you would just need to decide where the value is. And I love the pictures. I love the way it looks, but is it more valuable to have the fresh content without the ads? It's true that we went over budget last year and our current budget would be around $8,000 and it was our intent, it is our intention or was our intention if this is not happening to come before you and the Board of Finance for the additional appropriation for this year moving forward would be between $8,000 and $9,000 each year because it's not possible for the school to do the printing
so
anymore.
with 20 pages of content, how does that translate to how many pages this ends up being? Do
Well,
you
I
know, with
asked-
the ads.
He said it could be between, so each of the publications, they go in pages of 4, like it would be 4, 8, 12, 16. So if we give him 20, he said, well, it would either be a 24 or 32 pager. I don't know why not a 28, but it would have to be, to generate those ads. It would be at least 24, 28.
so
And I also wanted to touch base on one thing about the nonprofit contributors. When a nonprofit approaches us to want to submit an article or be a part of the quarterly, we ask ourselves the questions. What does this organization provide a resource, a service, or enrich our town in some way? And there is not one nonprofit in there that doesn't do one or all of those things. So we're very thoughtful about what goes on in there. We are not, in my opinion, giving unfair advantage to a certain business. At least that wasn't our intention in the very first one. And, we talked about it with the selectmen. And the second one, I believe, was, it was just fine. It didn't intertwine with the business at all, but they do provide a service, each one of our nonprofits, a service or resource or to enrich our community. Are there any other questions or should I?
How many pages is the quarterly right now?
20. So the
Like when
quarterly,
it gets delivered to my house?
it's 20 pages. Yes. The quarterly, it has gone up in cost, but what's gone up, the actual project has gone up 25% in addition to the cost of ink and the cost of the mailing has gone up also, but the project itself also, you have to understand, has gone up 25%. When we first started, we were around like 16 pages, pretty close. Once in a while, we would go to 20, around October, November, when we wanted to include that ballot. But the prices have gone up along with the project, so that's important to recognize.
Thanks.
Madeline, go ahead. Do you have a comment? Yeah, Madeline, you have to go to a microphone. Sorry. It's a new technology we're in, the world we're in today, so everyone wants to hear what you have to say.
Madeline Jeffrey, I live on Pendleton Hill Road. I'm hearing that something that has been a really important staple for the residents who live in North Stonington for quite a few years is going to be changed dramatically. It's going to be in color and it's going to have business ads and it's going to have slick paper. And it will be different for the groups who are submitting articles in terms of the timeline. And it seems to me that perhaps we could do something with the quarterly that we already have, which I think is absolutely remarkable. I think it's absolutely remarkable that a town has all of this interest and that it's done by volunteers, asking other volunteers to write, to take pictures, and to get this information in. And we look forward to having it. It's one of our guidelines to the town. If you want to have more business in it, that's absolutely possible. Let businesses know that they can run an ad in this, or that they can run an article. Why can't we ask businesses to take part in the paper that we already have? My mailbox is full of stuff that's in color, and I love color photography. I do. And I think that's what makes the quarterly rather unusual, that so far it's been mostly black and white. And I think that takes a lot of courage in the year 2022 to run a newspaper that's all black and white. I'm for it, with type that you can read, with not all kinds of jazzy typefaces and cute pictures. The quarterly, I just think I guess I'm asking you not to change it hurriedly. And I have a feeling that the publisher of the existing papers that you have are going to want you to hurry. I really think as a resident, I'm asking you to hold off on this. I think we have a good thing here, $6,000 or $7,000. We can find it somewhere. Believe me, I'm sure that we can. And I had no idea I was going to speak on this tonight, but I'm one of the people who have tried to have articles, and I recognize the work that Nita and Liza have put into this, and no other publishing group would suffice as far as North Stonington is concerned. So I'm asking you not to hurry, and you can get your businesses in this as well.
Thank you, Madeline.
So that actually brings up a really good point. Is could we control, if we still produced it, could we not control how many ads and who to help defray some of the cost?
I think I've asked that question with Lisa and Nita. I don't think they have a stomach for going out and knocking on doors and raising money for advertising. Is that correct? You go ahead, Nita. Yeah, microphone's gonna be fixed.
Hello? Hello?
We got
Oh,
you.
it works, okay.
So the gentleman is very gentlemanly. He's been doing this for 25 years. And he's very nice and means to be good. He's been in many towns. But he was very cautious about anything that wasn't done the way he wanted it. It was true that he was ready to start because he doesn't want to have anybody else. If you put out a part of something and he moved it, would you love it if it was where you wanted it?
Yeah, so we wouldn't have
do
control
not.
over the layout, or
No,
it's not sent to us before it's finalized. All we do is submit the articles and they put the whole thing together. Is that,
That's not totally true.
Oh, what
how does it,
Did he
how does
tell
it
you?
work?
We have editing, we could do editing on all the articles, and we asked if we could get mock-ups before the final, but, I think as Madeline said, we don't have to rush into this. We didn't have this before, it just came upon my desk a month ago. So, if we wanted to wait and have more discussion on this, if we wanted to put something in the quarterly in October to say, what do the people think? If this was a possibility down the road, what kind of feedback would they get? Again, it's not something we have to do for January 1st and have the articles in by November 1st. We could think about doing this in the spring, for the, March 1st, April 1st edition. So, yeah, I've never wanted to say we should just jump on something as soon as we see it. We did have a Zoom meeting and I've met with Lisa and Nita at least twice, once with him and once on their own. But I'm not saying we have to rush into it. I'm also saying that if we can come up with a better product, and sometimes different doesn't mean better, but sometimes different doesn't mean worse either. Just different just sometimes means different.
And there's no hope of putting all of our articles at the beginning and all the ads at the end.
right. That was one of the things I said.
Well, I think if you did that, right, so someone would read the first 4 pages and
It's
kind of like
just hard
fast
for me-
forwarding through the commercials.
It's
right?
hard for me to distinguish between what is an ad and what is an actual article. So it doesn't draw the eye to the things that we actually want them to look at. I am 100% in favor of waiting and not rushing into it, but I will also go on record as saying I'm not in favor.
Okay.
I think we need to decide relatively shortly to know where we're going, because we're going into having one quarterly left and then going into the spring where we know we're gonna be over budget with this. And I think Nicole actually at the last, it might have not been the last meeting, but one of the previous meetings, you actually brought up the point that we should look at making it smaller. We make not 20 page, when we talk about the costs in 20 pages, I think you mentioned maybe we should look at reducing the size or amount of pages, something like that. Because it has grown over the years and I feel like it'll continue to grow. And I like the idea of, hey, can we generate ads through businesses here? But that brings in a whole nother nightmare of selling ads, collecting that revenue and doing that. And I much as I love Nita and Lisa, I don't think they want to go out on the streets and try to peddle for ads. But I do think we should maybe table it to our next meeting, but I do think we should vote on it one way or another and either put it to bed or not. But I am concerned about our increased cost and some of the pushback we're going to receive from Board of Finance when we ask for another appropriation because we're over budgeted. I mean, people already have asked, why can't we just go 100% digital? Now, I know that our mixed population in town, some people like it in their hand and some people want to read it online. So there is that back and forth. But I think we're going to get to that tipping point soon where people aren't going to want to spend $10,000 on the newsletter in the quarterly. It's just and that'll get one thing that could get cut out of our budget. So how do we rectify that situation ahead of time? I mean, this is one solution.
Well, I would, if this wasn't decided on tonight or in the very near future, I would absolutely be willing to go to the Board of Finance to ask for an additional appropriation, and I wouldn't be ashamed to do so. We haven't gone over budget because we, have been doing anything, not, that wasn't frugal. We go, so I guess the question would be, where do you find the value? Where do you draw the line of what the value is that the North Stonington Quarterly contributes to the residents? It's a service to the residents. It's literally a quarterly report for all the town boards and commissions. And it puts in plain view any service or resource available to every single resident in our community, which to me is very valuable. And if there are folks there, I'm sure there are folks that don't think it's worth 8,000 or 10,000, but there's probably many more folks who think it might be worth a lot more if the case may be. Nita and I we aren't into selling the ads ourselves. I know it's been brought up, and I don't want to sound unreasonable about it or anything, but where the quarterly is in pages of 4, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for us. Like, what if we got 2 pages of ads? What are we going to do with the two blank pages? Or what if we got 5 pages of ads? What are we going to do with an additional 3 pages? It wouldn't necessarily be, it wouldn't be a really good use of our time to put it together in a timely fashion.
We're trying to put it in on our website as soon as it comes out. And once we start doing that, we can think more about all the people. You would probably rather look at it in the computer with.
No, I'd rather have a hard copy.
I would rather have.
I like it on my coffee table so I can read it when I feel like it.
When
I
I
like
mean,
a hard copy too, even though I'm just saying,
Are
there's
you
people
kidding
that
me?
have, I do, but there are people that have brought it up that why don't we do, the ones that say, hey, this is getting expensive, why don't we just do digital? I do like feeling it, but I have to say, I would also like this in seeing the advertising of the businesses that are in town, because I know how hard it is to get those businesses in front of our residents.
One correction, when you said we only have one, we have 2 editions. If we didn't do the January 1st, we still have 2 editions that would come out in this calendar year, because we'd have April 1st and July 1st. And even though July 1st is officially in the next year, the expense would be in this year, as we just talked about in the policy.
Right, so, but we'd be over budget.
No, we'd have 2, no, we'd save $1,500, twice it's $3,000. It would keep us under this year's budget.
Yeah, we're not going to be over budget because we will be asking for an additional appropriation. Like, we've already had this.
But we may not have to.
But no, I'm saying, I know if you move forward with this,
But even if we don't move forward on January 1st, if we waited till April 1st,
Mhm.
we'd have the April 1st and the July 1st. We'd
right?
save $3,000, which would keep us under budget.
Yeah, well, what I'm doing is like thinking ahead, like what if we never did that?
Then you'd have to.
Then we
for
would go for the
appropriation.
appropriation, but wouldn't we do that now?
I wouldn't do it until you needed it. Why would you do it ahead
Until
of
you
time?
were out of money.
And one other thing, if I may, and I promise I won't come back up to the mic. But, that is very pretty, but for me, the North Stonington Quarterly, that does not scream North Stonington. The North Stonington Quarterly and its black and whiteness and filled with the information that is North Stonington to me. That's all.
Yeah. And something that you said really kind of hit home for me. It's a service to the town. And if I hear one thing and a common theme, it's, we didn't know about that. I didn't know there was a town meeting coming up. I didn't know there was a referendum. If this is one way that lands on every single person's doorstop or mailbox, then I want it to be simple, to the point, and not distracting, where I'm too busy looking at ads or trying to find the content that I actually want. It is a service to the town. It's not just a really cool thing to get in the mail. It's a service, and communication in town is always a challenge. And I think if we muddy the waters and we distract people with all the bells and whistles, they're not gonna get what we need.
So it
them to
sounds like
get.
your argument is not the same as, your argument is not the same as some of the ones that Lisa had on a timing issue. Yours is more the glitz, the ads, the not being able to identify what's content, what's ad. That's a different story, right? So your argument's that.
I like all of the arguments in favor of not going to this.
And even the
I
article,
have multiple, I'm going with multiple.
and even the
options.
article that it would cost us $7,000 more. It wouldn't save
$7,000
It doesn't, it wouldn't, no, it
more?
wouldn't save us $7,000.
So what is the budget is 6,000 right now? Yeah, so we're looking for just $2,000 probably.
So we'd be at 9,000.
Brian,
But
do
they
you have a
already
comment?
have 6.
Brian,
right?
you can come up and make a comment.
Yeah, if I remember right, when this all started, it was kind of like a mutual thing, with the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education. And I think I just heard where school's not gonna print it anymore. Is this why we would have to go and spend another 7,000?
How many quarterlies have they not printed the school? Has there been 2 they've not printed? So they stopped a little while
No,
ago.
they haven't printed during COVID at all.
Yeah, so it's actually been a little bit since
Okay.
they've stopped
I'm
printing.
just wondering, would this be something like the, I think it's the Selectmen Times, they have it, and they have all the ads in the back, and they have articles in the front.
No, it's just, you can give them copies. In fact, if anyone would like a copy to look at, I
Yeah.
have some right here. You can more than sit there and look at it if you'd like.
Well-
Most of them are from Salem, Connecticut.
Can the schools start printing again, or?
There's issues with the school printing. One of the big issues is with the format that we have. They take 2 or 3 classrooms that spend almost an entire day folding, and you know how how it comes? They have to fold it, staple it, and now you've got pretty much a full day of multiple school kids not learning anything except how to fold and staple. I mean, that's what they're learning for the day.
Do the kids actually print it?
Yeah, but
Do
that's
they
only,
type it?
that's only 3 or 4 kids that print it. They do all the editing and
I see.
typing.
I just thought maybe that'd be a way to keep costs down.
Hmm.
Evidently not.
You weren't coming up again, I thought.
I know
Anita was right.
I know she was. I did make that promise. I just wanted to address the school thing. There's 3 reasons why we don't do it at the school. Number 1, is of course the students, they're not restrict, they're missing out on instructional time while they're doing this. There's no, they're not involved in the formatting. They're not involved in any of that. It's just kind of, volunteer work while you're supposed to be learning in school. It didn't start out that way. And when we first started and before the school moved over there, the printer was in the same classroom as the teacher, right, as the class. And so if they could run it right there while they were having class. Well, now, over there, the space, it's not in the same room, that it's in another room, down the hall. So that's not that convenient. You can't just run it. The teacher would be taking herself from her own classroom, from her students, to do that. And thirdly, it doesn't work anymore. There's a part that's been missing. So for all those 3 things, it's just not viable to do at the school anymore. There's no benefit to the students in doing it for us. So that's that.
Lisa, who do we have doing the folding and the stapling now?
Actually, that's another good thing. I'm glad you brought it up. The school's printer did not fold or collate. The printer where we go to folds and collates. So, and they sort, right, in numbers of 250 to 500, and then we just have to sort to the root. But they would literally have to count. They would have to fold them, collate them, fold them, and sort them into different root numbers.
I would be willing to have a folding and sorting party at my house, every 3 months.
Do we use agile printing?
Yes.
maybe it's, if we're not voting on this now, maybe it's worth talking to Agile. I know in the past, I used to use them for a lot of printing, but they also used to sell placemats for restaurants, and they used to get businesses. Maybe that's something we can maybe talk to him about and say, hey, can you produce our quarterly? Maybe with some ads where we get partial,
But he doesn't
Amen.
do the layout. Nita and Lisa do the layout.
well, maybe we can have a floating. I'm just trying to think of other ideas that might help reduce the cost and still keep the quarterly the way we have it, but
Bill Rickard,
down
you
on
have a
these costs.
comment? Sure, come on up.
Bill Ricker, Wyassup Road. I just want to remind everyone present, the genesis of the quarterly, coming out of the 2013 POCD, it was the recommendation of the townspeople at several forums that they wanted to have greater communication from the powers in government to the community. As selectmen many moons ago, I created a column of one selectman's opinion that was published in the Day on a monthly basis. It was received extremely well because the townspeople who did not read minutes of board meetings were able to get a summarization of what was going on in the town. That led to the quarterly being developed out of that comments from the 2013 POCD. It was also why the Conservation Commission discussed and began publishing the community calendar that we have done each year since that time as a smaller part of communication to the public, which has also been well received, but not nearly as well received as the quarterly. I think it's incumbent upon us to take every step possible to communicate to our public what our different boards and commissions are doing.
Bill, I agree, and I don't think anyone here is saying we should eliminate the quarterly. We're just saying, is there a way to make it better and at the same time save the town money? So that was, when something comes over my desk, and it would be a crime of mine not to bring it to the public and say, hey, or the other selectmen say, does this make sense? Which is what we're doing this evening. I mean, if I said to you, why don't you produce the calendar in all black and white, instead of burgundy and some of the nice colors you do, and use color pictures, it would save the town some money. But we're used to seeing your calendar the way you do it, and you do a great job with it. I'm just saying, why couldn't we bring the quarterly up to another level, similar to the nice job, the professional job that's done on the calendar? Thank you. Okay.
So how do we want to handle this tonight?
I think we, as I mentioned earlier to Brett, that we have, even if we don't go forward with the January 1st, we still have the April 1st and the July 1st, which will be billed in this year's budget. So that gives us enough money savings in those two quarters to keep it under what we budgeted for. We'd save $3,000 roughly, and that would keep us down to about $5,000. Or just under 6, which is what's budgeted. So we'd have to make a decision tonight. I can get more clarification from the gentleman. I think also I thought Brett's idea of going locally and say, hey, we got a guy from Pennsylvania that's willing to do this for us at this price. Can you do it locally for us? Keep the business close to home. Maybe we have more to say on how we want it done. And, we aren't just businesses in North Stonington solicited for ads. Maybe the price of ads is cheaper. So I wouldn't mind looking at local. We don't have to give this guy an answer right now. So we can look at local people, even the person you're working with now, and say, I'll show you, here's the one from Salem. Can you do this? And how much would it cost us? Okay, does that sound like a good compromise for now? And we'll table this until further notice.
sounds good.
No, I'll do that. You don't have to. Okay, so I'm saying, you don't have to go on your own. I don't mind going and not just Agile, but I'm sure there's other people in the area that do these kind of publications. You see it, all the restaurants have table, the table mats and so on with advertisings on them and
Ask them.
one click of the button does it.
Unless the battery died again.
So when you go to Agjo. So when you go to Agjo, would they be, soliciting for the businesses?
Well,
The print shop that you would be asking, or?
I would ask them if they would do it. I just tell them what the deal is with the other company and see if there's somebody locally that would do the same thing for us. I'm sure they're not the only people in the country that does this, so. It'd be nice to work with a Connecticut or a nearby Rhode Island group rather than go to Pennsylvania. Okay, so at this point, why don't we just hold this for now? I'll get more information. We'll look at some local vendors, see if we can get somebody locally that can do the same thing that this group in Pennsylvania can do, and we'll bring it back. Okay, maybe with some improvements to what we see here tonight. All right, with that said, any other comments before we move on? Nothing online. Okay, this next one shouldn't be too long. We want to put an RFP out for the proposal to put the windows in, the window, we ordered the new windows for the 1750 house, the John Dean Gallup house. And we have to have them installed. So we'll put an RFP out to have the work done. You can see the scope of work is to take the old window out, put the new window in, put new trimmer on the window and clean up. That's what we're asking. And you have it in your packet. I wrote the RFP this past week. And I'd like to see if we can get approval to go ahead and put this out. So the windows are due in, the majority of windows are due in the third week in September. There's 2 windows coming in the first week in October. It still gives us plenty of time to put these in the warmer weather. So just any comments or questions or any reason why we couldn't, or can I entertain a motion to put this RFP out to get this done?
I think it's great to get it out. Something like this, is there a way for us to put it on our Facebook feed as well for the town? Just because this is something that there's local contractors that might be able to bid it that don't normally look at the RFP list. And I just think that we can do things like that to try to get, so as we talked about our purchasing policy, there's our towns that have a step for local businesses that allow a 5% variable for local businesses, but
We probably have a dozen people in town that are capable of doing this.
Right.
The 3 or 4 I've talked to, so we have no time to do that, but
Right.
anyway, I'd love to put it out locally, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, both.
Definitely. Moving forward, we'll put everything that we put for RFPs on the Facebook so that we can get it out to different people.
So I'll make a motion to approve this RFP.
Oh, we can still discuss, right?
Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Brett, seconded by Nicole. We're open for discussion.
I would like, I don't think that it says it specifically anywhere, but can we at least give preference to people that have done work on historic properties? I just am really concerned about getting those windows out and something happening to the walls or so I guess when the bids come in, I'd love to see if anybody's done any work on.
So I will
historic.
be part of the ones reviewing the bids, and as you know, that is my background.
Yes,
So, and I am also a history buff. I understand how history works, and I feel the same way you do. I would hate to have something go wrong
Yeah.
here. And knowing and I think we said in this that you're working on a historical home, so you have to know what you're working on. This isn't just a slam, bam, thank you, ma'am type of, and forget it, that was really old, wasn't it? Sorry about that.
And these aren't the type of windows that went into town hall, right, Bob? Just want to
Yeah, no,
clarify.
I think that.
I'm just making reference because Bob said that multiple times that he wanted historic looking windows.
All right, then I'm all set.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna vote. Yeah, I'm just trying to get over my last comment. So,
just move on.
With that said, all in favor of, moving forward with this RFP as written, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Every once in a while, I think we need a sensor button up there. Next, tax relief community group. We had a woman that came in, I think it was not our last meeting, but the meeting before, and spoke about some of the hardships with, especially with our elderly citizens when it came to taxes, and maybe there's some more we could do. I think 4 years ago, when I was a new selectman and Mike was the first selectman, we looked at putting together a group. I think Brian Rathman was on it and John Olson was on it, and we said, why don't we look at this and how can we better serve the older taxpayers in our town, and how can we try to protect them so they're not taxed out of their homes? And what happened was it was started with good intention, but then about a week or two after that first meeting, the petition came out to halt the school building project. And when that came out, pretty much all the efforts of that board went to the school building project. So there was not a lot of thought to do work on other things at the time. All our thoughts shifted to one thing was, okay, we thought this was gonna start. Now we have a petition. Now it's stopped. And how do we get it going again? And if you were around at that time, you know that was a very contentious subject in town. So this kind of fell by the wayside. And after listening to Chris speak about this at that meeting, I thought it would be a good time to maybe bring it back. And I mentioned to John Olson, I mentioned to Brian Rathburn, and I thought that we should probably think about either putting together a committee or a work group to look into this for us, report back to the Board of Selectmen as an advisory group, and let us know what they can come up with, and they can work with our tax assessor, Darrell, on this, and if we can find information ourselves, we can add to it, but I'd like to have them, I don't know whether you want to do a work group or a committee or how you want to handle this, but my thought is to put together a small group of 5 or 6 people to have them work on this and bring it back to the Board of Selectmen.
I'm all in favor of working towards something like that. I have a few comments on it. One, I know when I was on Board of Finance, they were, on my way out, they were talking and they were gonna get a group to look these topics through the Board of Finance. I reached out to Paul and they haven't talked about it since the changeover. I know that. But when I started doing research on this, you know, I like my research, Nicole.
I don't know how you get anything done.
I was confused because in the July meeting of July 2021, there was a proposal for tax relief for seniors and handicapped.
Right, and that got approved.
And it got approved with a 3-0 vote. And Daryl was supposed to come back just to double check on tax relief program discussion, motion to approve. Bob, you actually made the motion. So it went through 3-0. And the only thing was to approve the program as presented by Daryl Del Grosso. And he's gonna double check state program following the income levels. So there's already been a program that got approved, but it never got implemented.
I'm not sure that it never got implemented. I think it did. I think if you speak to Darrell, he did implement this and it is available to our seniors. However, I think that seniors want to go a step further.
I don't see it anywhere in there, in our ordinances or
I
any.
think it would have to go to town meeting. I think the
Yeah.
discussion, what was the date on that? So I can go back.
It was June 22nd, 2021.
I think it was that was the first program that was presented and the intent was to discuss more programs and bring the package to town meeting. So I think that's why it kind of dropped off the radar. Because there was also talk for something with,
First responders.
thank you. So I think that was kind of where that went and Daryl did not come back with those figures. We do have an existing program for elderly and disabled, but this was a separate or a change to that.
One thing we don't have is a tax freeze.
Correct.
And I think that's what some of the people that we're looking for is to get a tax freeze. When you reach a certain age, your taxes are frozen, you're not paying anymore and anytime after that. So I think it would be worthwhile to have a committee to look at it on a work group.
Do you think it's something we should discuss with the Board of Finance to get a member on that too? But I'm just concerned that we had a program get approved and never implemented, because it was supposed to be implemented, it looks like in October.
Well, I mean, there's nothing that we're gonna be able to do about it now if it didn't. But I think that the work group can certainly do the background information. As they start to gather facts.
I just, I get that, but now we're backtracking and doing more research on stuff that was, if you look back, it does go back to 2018 where there were studies and then they were, like you said, you were meeting weekly to talk about it on the first Monday at 1 o'clock or something. But then this actually got approved. Daryl did a bunch of research and proposed it. It got approved. So it seems like if there's other stuff we want to bring forward, we should, but I think we should look into getting this
What that proposal was.
right and moving that. If you voted on it as selectmen, it should have moved forward.
But why couldn't we add to that? If that's already been approved by the selectmen, why couldn't we add to that, bring the whole thing to a town meeting?
We can, I just worry about the time frame. So, this, if we're looking to make an impact to our taxpayers, shouldn't we start with what's already been approved and then add to it? I just worry that if we start with a committee, I mean, we all know how committees go sometimes, and it might be a year before we see any results. I think we can maybe do this in parallel, say, hey, let's research this and what happened, and talk to Daryl and still get that committee together. But I do think getting some buy-in from the Board of Finance on the committee, or at least getting some members on there from that would be helpful, because ultimately this money comes out of our budget somewhere. So we have to make up that revenue. And if we don't have buy-in from the start, it's gonna be a night.
So,
But I remember it was really supported from the Board of Board of Finance to say, hey, we really need to look into these things and come up with a solution.
I agree. I think that we can do it, at the same time as we put a work group together. I think that because it's gonna be short-lived, I don't know, if forming a work group is any easier and has less requirements attached to it than a full-on committee. But I do think that we should have somebody from Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance on the work group. I think we should have at least one. And then interested residents. And then we can do our homework at the same time that they're getting going.
So why don't I speak to Daryl, see where we are with this initiative?
Tell me who Daryl is?
He's the tax assessor.
Oh, okay, sorry. My
Yes.
husband pays taxes.
So I went back to emails from prior to that. So it's associated with statute 12-129N, local option tax relief, and it does have to go to town meeting. So
And for whatever reason, it just never did.
correct. I honestly think it was because we wanted to present it as a package of things and nothing moved forward with any other piece of the package.
Okay. Go ahead, Brian, you have a comment?
When I looked it up, I think it was Connecticut statute. Like 12-170B. And it said that selectmen have power to form a committee of at least 5 people. And deal with that was within 60 days, the committee is supposed to research it and see what they come up with. And surprisingly enough, it said in report to the Board of Finance, which I thought was kind of crazy. Selectmen form a committee, we should report back to them. That's according to state law. I think they should have put it. Because once you start Connecticut statute, it brings you 40,000. But I'm in favor of a freeze, yeah. Because I'm a senior citizen. But there is a Connecticut statute that says, you can look at it. And I think the one we did back then, and what Daryl did was he took what the state said is permissible for now. In fact, it's in effect over at Town Hall, seniors. But it goes to the seniors' income. What most of the people I talk to, they'd like to see a tax freeze. For senior citizens that lived here. And I think that's part of the Connecticut statute, they had to live here at least get a certain number of years. So you don't get a lot of people from another town coming in, hey, let's go to North Stonington, freeze our taxes. So anyways, I wanted to just let you know. I'd be interested in it. I think it's for a tax freeze. Daryl's the tax assessor. He's gonna try to keep as much taxes out of people he can. I saw that last set.
Thank you, Ryan.
you.
All right, so why don't I speak with Darrell tomorrow, just see where we are with what happened in 2021, see where we are with that. And then, after that, I can come back, report at the next meeting. And at that point, we decide to form a committee to look into additional tax breaks, like Brian said, tax freezes and so on. I think that would make sense to do what we can to try to help the senior citizens who would love to stay in the homes they're in now and not get taxed out of them. So I think it'd be a good thing for this particular board to do. So, okay. And if we do form a workshop or a committee, I agree, we should have a select person and a board of finance member on it. All right. Anything else on property tax relief at this point? Anything online, Christine? Anything else from the
I'll
audience?
send out those minutes to you guys that I found, just so it's easy for you guys to.
I have them. I have hard copies. Thank you. But thank you for the offer. Send them to Nicole, though. She probably doesn't have them. Okay. Number 10, town property on Winter Jog Hill. So you should have had a letter, a very short letter, expressing interest in buying back property, buying property on off Wrights Road on Winter Jog Hill. Right now, that's town property. There's a few properties up there that have dilapidated buildings on them. One was thought of as a possible place for solar. One was sort of a possible place for affordable housing. Neither happened. I think the solar project was awarded and then a company closed and they turned it to another company and that company decided not to do it. When it came to the affordable housing, that failed at a town meeting and then went to referendum and failed again. So this land's been sitting there. And again, there's buildings on this land. There's a falling down barn and a couple of houses that are probably not able to be lived in the condition they're in now. So we're approached by this couple that wanted to come in and buy this property. One of the people grew up on this property. So it would be nice to come back and buy property that she actually grew up on. Sitting there doing nothing, I said, well, here's the thing is I can't just agree to sell you this property. There's a process that has to take place. That starts with a letter of intent, which they sent to us. Secondly, then as the Board of Selectmen, we would have to vote to send an application over to the Planning and Zoning Commission, asking for it's an application for what they call an 8-24. And the Planning and Zoning Committee then says, does the Planning and Zoning Committee think that the town would be better served to keep this land as town property? Or if not, does it make sense then to let the Board of Selectmen move forward in the process? If it came back to us and they said, yes, you could sell the property, we would then have to put an RFP out to see what people would be willing to pay for it. Once we put the RFP out and we decided on which group we would want to sell it to, then we would go, and it'd be a sealed bid process. We go to a town meeting. And then the town meeting would decide whether we could sell the land in question to the bidder at the price they were willing to pay. So this isn't just something that happens overnight.
Do they know this?
Yes, they know exactly how this all happens because I told them that's the process. There's no guarantee that just because they want to buy it back, that they would get it. Because when it goes through the sealed bid process, somebody could outbid them for it.
And there's no guarantee who would end up purchasing it and what they would do with it. We would lose control over
Well,
what they would do.
not so much because they'd have to still go to planning and zoning to do any kind of building or developing. So, yeah, we wouldn't lose control, because even if they bought it, they would have to, so they want to put a subdivision on it, or somebody want to come in and do a bunch of affordable housing, or somebody wanted to put solar on it. They still have to go to planning and zoning. And I believe then the planning and zoning would have public hearings on it. Yes.
I mean, I understand the premise, but I would be uncomfortable going through that process with a sealed bid. I think state statute allows us to sell the property like we would anything else if we chose to. So you would list it for sale, just like we did the Holly Green condo. That was the senior, the rec commission and probate court. I think that gives you a little more room to say, hey, this is what we're looking to sell it for based on market conditions. Compared to putting out a bid, and if we got a $10 bid, I know the town could vote it down, but I think it gives you a little more.
When you sell
Openness.
something, you can have a reserve minimum.
Yep.
We've done that.
But we could list it.
Right.
Like we do anything else. But I do think this brings up some other things that I know, that actually came out during campaign season, going door to door, talking to people. There are little bits of pieces of properties in town that residents would like to buy that join their property that the town owns, that they're not buildable just, or they can't be their own separate real lot for sale, but they could do additional property. So I think things like this we should be looking at some of these properties and seeing what we can do with them and unload, but this might start that conversation.
I don't disagree with you, but I think we need to look at this particular situation at this time, and that would, as you said, that could open up an opening for other things to look at, other possibilities. So, but as far as this particular piece, there's 5 pieces of land, as you saw in the letter, and they total about 106 acres, 105 acres.
9 months.
So, if they're sold, whether they're bought by these people or by somebody, they go onto the tax rolls, number one, and whatever the price that they would pay for them would be money that would go instantly into the grand list. So, with that said, again, there's a process, and as Brett just said, I think that we could look at some other pieces of land in town. I know the past first selectman was all about selling some land in town. We talked about a few pieces, but in this particular case, we weren't looking to sell this. People came out of the woodwork and said, hey, I grew up here. I'd like to get the land back for my family. And that's how it came about. And then I had to inform them that it just wasn't an easy process. When you're working with a town, a non-chartered town, there's rules that have to be followed, and this is part of the process. So if we were voting to send an application for an 8-24 with a planning zoning, then it would be in their court, and they would hold public hearings on the reasons why the town should retain the property or why the town could sell the property. And then we wouldn't get it back until that decision was made. And then once it's planning zoning said, yes, we think the town could sell this property, then that's when it's back in our court. That's when the other process starts with the RFP, if we go that route, and the town meeting.
Did we have an intention when we bought it? Of
It was
what to do with
donated.
it?
There's been many things thought about. I mean, there's where the
Animal-
I
animal
know-
shelter was gonna go, solar farm was gonna go, affordable housing projects were gonna go. So, conservation has put some trails through the property. So there have been some proposed uses, but nothing is.
And there are wetlands there, right?
There are some wetlands. And as I said, there's also, I think, at least 3 buildings that are in non-livable condition.
So we did look at other options for it, and those all did fall through as of now. I don't see any harm in sending it to planning and zoning to start that process, to see what comes out of that. And it gives us time to look at all the options, but I'd make a motion to send it to planning and zoning for the review.
I'll second that motion. So we'll continue the discussion. So, and again, we don't have to determine now as far as selling it, whether we go through an RFP with a sealed bid or another process, whatever statute allows us to do by law. But I think at least that puts the ball in the P and Z court. Now they will have the public hearings. And that's when people will come and say, I think the land should be saved for the town for this, or for whatever the reason may be. I think I know if I grew up there and I wanted to buy the land back, I at least want an opportunity. And that's all I'm offering to these people, as long as we do it the right way. Make sure that we don't circumvent any statutes or ordinances.
Do we have any rough market
I don't
pricing on it?
I don't have that. And if we did go to a sealed bid, and I don't know what anyone would bid, but you said, I think you thought it may be more beneficial for the town to put a price on it and see if it would sell. It may not sell, but you also could have these people come in and put a sealed bid price on it. And somebody bid just by accident $5 more and get it at a very low bid. So now it's like, I guess we could turn down we think the bid is not adequate. We could turn down, as Christine said, we can put a minimum bid as far as the RFP.
But we
And-
don't have to decide any of that.
No,
until-
and there are wetlands involved, and there's other things involved. There's buildings that probably should come down. There's a private road that the town's not willing to take over. That Wright's Lane goes through the property.
Yeah.
So,
So there are benefits to selling it and putting it on the tax rolls if we're not utilizing it ourselves. That's why I think at least let's start that process and see if it is beneficial to the residents to sell it or keep it, and it goes through planning zoning and they would allow us to sell it.
We don't know, would planning and zoning determine how many acres of the 106 are actually usable and buildable and?
Nate would be able to tell us like how many houses go on a piece of
Yeah.
land because of wetlands, what the setbacks would be, what the frontage you need to have, a certain amount of frontage to be able to build a house.
I do remember the solar farm and the affordable housing. The residents of Wrights Road were obviously very vocal about those particular projects. I'm just, because we don't know the intent of these people. I mean, you would hope that they just want to buy back family land and build something, but, all right.
Brian?
Is that the same land that the Indians gave the town?
It may have been at one time, but yeah, I think part of it probably was. I think there's one or two lots that the Eastern Pequots gave to the town.
I didn't know if there was any stipulations when they gave it to us, whether they get it back, we don't.
I don't know, but if someone's gonna buy it, they're gonna have to handle the title searches and everything for that, correct?
Okay.
Bill Ricker, do you have a comment?
Bill Ricker, Wyassup Road. It was over a dozen years ago that this holding company out in the Midwest deeded this over to the town with a letter suggesting that it can be used for open space and indeed for affordable housing. There was an effort to have affordable housing on a small parcel of that acreage, 8 acres on the left of Wrights Road, which was passed and then defeated in a questionable vote at a town meeting. I won't go into the details of that, but that's true. The Conservation Commission has cleared, marked trails throughout that property, erected a sign, had a 2-car parking lot built at the entrance of one of the trails. Trail connects with the Narragansett Blue Trail and goes over to the town landfill. It's not just sitting there. It's property that has been used throughout the pandemic. It's property that has been hiked, and unfortunately, motorized vehicles have gone in there as well. but still, it is being used extensively. With the day just mentioning, sadly, that North Stonington is the lowest percentage of affordable housing in the New London County at 1.2%, I think they mentioned, the lowest in the county. It behooves us to consider our property in town to try to change that so that we can approach the 10% that the state of Connecticut has been asked. To consider the sale of town land, which has been set aside for both the present and future generations, to consider that sale, to consider it to be folly, and ask that it not be put up for sale.
Thank you, Bill. And I think that all the things that Mr. Ricker had just brought up all have credence. And I think those are the kind of things that will be brought up in the planning and zoning open hearings. I think it's I think that's where this would sit in the land use office, have them do their due diligence. Well, I'm sure we'll get a lot of pros and cons on whether sell it or not sell it, but I think they're better served to look at land than the Board of Selectmen are in this particular case. And I believe we let people do that's what they do. So I'm in favor of sending it over there, and we have a motion. Is there any other comments? Madeline, sure. You want to make a comment?
I remember the town buying that land very well. And I remember that there was a big discussion about how we could use it if we did buy it. And it was very determined by the selectmen at the time that there'd be no restrictions on it at all, that we would just buy it as land. And so I'm here as a land preservationist tonight. I'm not against any use of it really, but I do think it's absolutely invaluable for us to hold on to it. This couple has said that they lived there in the past and that they wanted to return to this land. I remember us buying it. I thought one of the neighbors there who was part of the group. I don't ever remember any kind of nostalgia equated with this land. I remember walking it with several people from planning and zoning when I decided to buy it. And yes, there are some dilapidated houses on it. And yes, there's a dirt road. And yes, it does abut the landfill. But you know what? It is an absolutely glorious piece of land. It's high up on Woodchuck. It's far away from everything. And I think it's a diamond. And I hope that we as a town will realize and that we hold on to it and respect it and use it for however we need to. But I don't see us putting restrictions on it right now. I really don't. I do not see it going before planning and zoning. We've made our decision. As townspeople, we bought it. We want to hold on to it for use. We didn't buy it to sell it to somebody else. I remember we bought it. We found and I don't and land. We think we have a lot of land in North Stonington. We really do not. We really, really do not. And I ask people to hold on to this thing and do something wonderful with it for us, our children, for our families, for our race. I think it's very in terms of dilapidated house and it's really an amazing.
Thank you, Madeline. And I think those are good points that you made. But I also think that the Board of Selectmen, who none of us were here when, I didn't know that land was purchased. I thought the land was given to the town, but Okay, so with that said, so this is a board that's always wants to listen to what the town wants to do. It's, we have no personal agenda. I just think that what the town wants to do makes sense to me. So by going through this process of going to the Planning and Zoning Commission, have hearings, and ultimately a town meeting, there's no better way to vet something out and get all the people on both sides of an issue to speak. And then the town ultimately makes that decision. When it goes to the town meeting, even then, someone could refer it to go to, send it to referendum. So that's when you want to have the people that you want the most voices possible to be heard, not just, 6 people sitting in a room at, 8:30 on a Tuesday. So I think that's all good points, Madeline, and I don't disagree with you, but I think I don't disagree with you. I just think it's important that we listen to the town as a whole, the best we can, because we know we can never get everyone in town to have a voice, but okay, so with that said, oh, hold on. Do we have to stop now for a minute? Everyone's still there?
Um, I'm gonna apologize. I need you to tell me one more time the process of sending this to, planning and zoning and what the end result may or may not be.
Okay, so in my opinion, this is what has to happen. I was speaking to Nate about this. We go from the Board of Selectmen on a motion tonight to send it to with an application for an 8/24 to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Would then have to have public hearings on, like to do on everything that happens to planning and zoning, whether they should sell or retain the land. If they determine that they feel that at this point, they don't see the need to retain it, and we could entertain selling it, it goes back into our court, the Board of Selectmen court. At that point, we would then call for a town meeting. Excuse me, first we go through an RFP process or something similar to an RFP process or an alternate process, whatever we can do according to statute and ordinance. Once we have our bids in, we decide this is who we'd want to sell it to, contingent to the outcome of a town meeting. So we bring it to a town meeting, it's heard again, everyone has a chance to speak. At that town meeting, there's a vote. If it's not a consensus of someone thinks it's too important, we should send this to a referendum, they could do that. But to me, that way we're getting 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 voices heard, not 5 or 6. And I just think that when we come up with something like this, and I don't think any of us have an agenda, whether we want to sell it or not sell it, I think it's, what does the town think we should do? And that's where I am with this, so.
I agree. Let's move down there. Just so for reference, there was a study in fall of 2012, Windachog Road Parcel Development Study, which you can look at all the different alternatives that were presented by the University of Connecticut. And it goes from residential mixed use to a craft community development to farm studio, farmers market to mixed use with commercial, residential, apartment buildings, community farm and greenhouses. So it wasn't always slated for just open space. It looks like there was quite a bit of research done on in studies, and we haven't moved forward on any of the things from back then. And I do understand the affordable housing project was voted down up there at that time, and then the animal control building fell through up there as well. At least it'll give us more information if we go through this process on what.
And if the process for the sale doesn't go through as we see it here, it may stimulate something else. Maybe affordable housing would come back again with another proposition. Maybe something else would come up that would say this would be a better use for the land, but that should come out through the planning and zoning hearings, I would think. Okay, so there's a motion. If there's any other comment before we vote to either send or not send this over to planning and zoning? No other comments? Okay, all in favor of sending this with the application for an 8/24, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
You're opposed?
Yes.
Okay. 2-1. Thank you. Okay, tax refunds.
You want me to read?
Sure. We can just lump them together.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the tax refunds to Toyota Lease Trust for $316.20. Total I don't understand that. Refunds per selectmen adjustments, $316.20. Gotcha, sorry. Let me start again. I make a motion to approve the tax refund to Toyota Lease Trust in the amount of $316.20.
All right, second motion. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, next. Almost done, yeah. Minutes. Nicole, we're gonna read the minutes for the last two meetings.
I make a motion to approve the Town of North Stonington Board of Selectmen meeting minutes held on July 26th, 2022 at 6:30 PM at the North Stonington Education Center and via Zoom as written.
Second that motion. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Okay, second set.
I make a motion to approve the Town of North Stonington Board of Selectmen special meeting in the new Town Hall Conference Room on August 11th, 2022 at 9 AM as written.
Second the motion. Sorry.
No.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes for August 11th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any other public comment before we adjourn? No other public comment. Looks like our next meeting is,
Oh, sorry.
September 13th. And
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
I second that.
Nicole seconds it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned at